So this is our session for today. We are happy to have a session on youth health heroes. And this is our fourth session out of 12 for 2021. So in this session, we'll be talking a lot about the journeys of our speakers, particularly about the importance and diversity of health journeys in general. So as mentioned, we'll be having two speakers, Aryan and Kai, to speak about their strategies and really understand how our members can take part in our community to learn more about how they can expand their health journey as well.
So for those of you who are familiar, this is Kahoot, which is a website where we can play a really quick trivia type of game. So to stay hydrated, what is the best drink to consume for routine physical activity? So we have four options here. So pick the best one to stay hydrated while you're staying physically active. So yes, it is water. So water is always going to be the best drink to stay hydrated. While the other things, are marketed and designed to, keep you hydrated, at the end of the day, water is always going to be the best thing for your body to drink. But, it just depends on your specific needs at the time. So just keeping in mind that water is always the best drink to consume while working out. Which of the following is the most common nutrient supplement used by adolescents? So adolescents are everyone from like age 18 under. So what's the common nutrient supplement? So which of these nutrients are these people using the most? That is correct. It's vitamin C. So vitamin C is the nutrient supplement that people have found that are used most by adolescents. Vitamin K, E, and A are also really important, but so fun fact about those three vitamins, those are all fat soluble vitamins, and vitamin C is also on here. So, just making sure that you all know that, people use a lot of vitamin C. What is the CDC recommended amount of sleep needed for teens aged 13 to 18? What is the CDC recommended amount of sleep needed for teens aged 13 to 18? So they're all in ranges. So which one is the closest to what the CDC recommends? Yes, it is actually 8 to 10 hours. So the CDC recommends that all teenagers aged 13 to 18 sleep for 8 to 10 hours every night, which is kind of hard to do sometimes. True or false? Children and adolescents 6 to 17 years of age should do 1 hour of moderate to vigorous physical activity each day. So children and adolescents 6 to 17 should do 1 hour or at least an hour of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity each day. Yes, it is true. Yeah, so that should be your goal. So if that is, brisk walking, if that is playing around outside, if that's going on a run, a hike, 1 hour of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity is always recommended for children and adolescents this age. True or false? Teens with healthy diets are half as likely to develop depression compared to those with diets high in processed foods. And fun fact about this question, I actually took it from Safe Space's website. One of our speakers is one of the youth leaders in Safe Space. So this is actually something that I took from their website, which is a great resource on mental health tips for young people. Let's go to the next one. What is the average hours of screen time of youth ages 15 to 18? So this is all from the CDC, and we're going to do 3 of these questions. So there's different age ranges, but what is the average amount of screen time for youth ages 15 to 18? Whoa, it's pretty split here. Okay, sorry. 8 is a little too close. That's a little tricky, but it's okay. 7.5 hours was the average that the CDC found that youth ages 15 to 18 spend, either watching TV, on their laptop, on their phones, on their tablets, all of that kind of stuff combined. It's around 7.5 hours. But everyone who picked 8, you're pretty close. You're pretty close. Not quite, though. All right, this next one's going to be the same thing, but for ages 8 to 10. And then we're also going to do another age range. So average hours of screen time of youth ages 8 to 10. 6 hours a day. So a little less than 15 to 18, but it's 6 hours a day for these youth. And then we're going to do one more of these questions. So 11 to 14, what is the average hour? Is it going to be more or less? Yeah, so this age range of youth actually have the largest amount of screen time. So it was 9 for ages 11 to 14, then it was 7.5 for ages 15 to 18, and then it was less than all of that, around 6 hours for anyone under 10. So that's really interesting. I know that there are some 11 to 14-year-olds watching right now, so think about your screen time. Last question. More than 1 in 3 high school students have experienced persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in 2019. Yes, this is true. And it was up actually by 40% from previous years that were studied. So this is a really big problem with youth in America, that feeling of sadness and hopelessness. So I really hope that we can share some really great tips from our speakers and from our other programs to help out with this kind of stuff. So yes. Nice job, Prachi. We promise Prachi didn't see these questions beforehand. Even though she's working with us, she didn't see these questions before. So
Awesome. Thank you for the great Kahoot trivia. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for our speakers for today. Okay, so our first speaker for today, his name is Aryan Mohindra. He goes to Morio Catholic High School. He actually spoke at one of our previous events on Health Heroes, so we're super excited to have him back here speaking about his journey. And some of his hobbies are, walking his dog, playing basketball, and hanging out with his friends. So Aryan, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, so I'm Aryan. I had a couple of experiences that I'm going to share today. A couple years ago in 8th grade, this is actually the beginning. I just made the basketball team, and I really wasn't disciplined at that time. So I had bad habits such as overeating, being lazy, and etc. So during the time where we started to get into play, like doing drills at practices, going to games, we would run these drills where I couldn't keep up with the team, and that restricted me from play because my coach didn't think that I could be able to keep up with the team during the game, and that was true. And although that was true, and I knew that it was true, I really wanted to participate. So I knew I had to do something about it because I didn't want to stay like this forever, because basketball to me at that time was like a really big part of my life. So I see why I should not be able to play. So I think that it was a big thing for me to get better at it and go ahead and do it. So let's get into what I experienced at the time. So at that time, I was actually, I was overweight. I was about 230 pounds. I was about 5'10", and that was pretty tall for me then. But to give you like a good understanding, for someone who's 6'3", 230 pounds, that's still very overweight. So you can see at this point, it's really, really bad. So I was pre-diabetic, and some of the symptoms I was experiencing was not even catch my breath, especially when I go running for even short distances and walking for long distances. So the other one was increased thirst, and I believe that was due to excess of blood sugar. And don't quote me on this because I'm not a doctor, but I believe that I did some research on it. It is excess blood sugar, but again, don't trust me on that. Essentially, let's get into what I did for taking action. So I researched a lot on how I could improve myself, and I was trying to get right in the head because I didn't really believe in myself at the time. So I think it's 80% mental and then 20% action to me, because you can do as much as you want. You can dream, you can think, and you can do the research. That's 80% to me, but 20% is taking the action. Because for me, it was all mental. Most of it was mental, because obviously you cannot achieve success without doing any action. So that's why I said 20% is action. So first, I think if you're trying to achieve anything, your desire for success should be more than the fear in taking action. In doing that, that was for me. I wanted to achieve the success in reducing my weight and being able to run more and be able to catch my breath more so that I can play with my team. And my desire for that success was much more than my fear of doing that action. The fear for me was I would hate running. I was not fond of running. I actually despised it. I think that it was a waste of my time. But right now, I think that running is keeps me mentally keeps my mental aspect very very strong, because when I'm running, I really don't. I think that it reflects back to when I was in 8th grade. I always reflect when I'm running. That's what I do, um, and keeps me good mentally for me. So as my mental health contributes to my mental health, eating well also, and I want to say this very loud and clearly. I'm still not perfect to this day. I still have cheat days. I still have a lot of stuff I used to have, but I have it more, and so moderation. And moderation to me was having a separate days. On a couple days for me, I would go all out and I eat a lot. But then for the next couple months, I restart and refresh. So I think that if you're trying to go like, especially for these type of journeys, I think you should take a break sometimes. That allows you to refresh, and that allows you to keep going. Because I think that in order for someone to be successful, failure is needed. Failure is a part of the process. Failure is not a separate thing from success. You need failure to learn. So a principle that I like to keep in my life is win or learn. People call it win or lose, but for me, if I lose, or where people say lose, I think it's a big learning experience as to how I can improve the next time. Like if I think that failure is actually very needed. Some people think that, especially in our society, I think that people think that failure should be despised, and it's overlooked, because every failure has a lesson in it. So for me, I think it's very essential. And again, yes, I took the action, and when I took the action, I didn't really think much about what my fear was. I didn't really care about my fear, because all I really cared about was achieving success, because my desire was far larger than my fear. So yeah, I hope you learned something from what I said today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Aryan, for sharing your journey. We'll get a chance to answer any questions from our members on his speech, but for now, we will go ahead and move on to our next speaker, Kai. So let me go ahead and share my screen again.
So our next speaker is going to be Kai. They are a senior at Menlo Atherton High School, and they're a leader in Safe Space, which was the organization that I mentioned previously. And without further ado, Kai, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, so my name is Kai Dorn, and I'm here to talk to you guys about eating disorder recovery and my personal wellness journey, and sort of how they kind of tie together. So a bit about me before I begin. I'm a high school senior at Menlo Atherton High School, and I'm going to college next year. I haven't really decided what my major is going to be, or sorry, I haven't decided which college I'm going to, but my major is going to be neuroscience and philosophy double major. I volunteer for a youth mental health organization called Safe Space. And there I'm the Pride Committee lead, which is an LGBTQ plus affinity group. I'm also the lead for my school. So I work a lot with my school's administration to make positive changes at our school, like within policy, within sort of action and events, to help like better promote student mental health. And I'm also in our community committee, which is sort of like a subcommittee that works a lot with like other organizations such as CWC and does a lot of outreach. And at my school, I'm in band journalism, and I'm the president of our school's Gender and Sexualities Alliance, which is an activism group dedicated to sort of like advocacy for the LGBTQ+ community, as well as providing support and education to our members. And then in my free time, I like art, I like hanging out with my friends, I like reading, writing, all that good stuff. So yeah, and a bit about Safe Space, which is the organization I volunteer for. And Safe Space has really inspired me to give like talks such as these and really talk about my experiences with mental health and wellness. So Safe Space is a youth mental health nonprofit, and we operate on a very for youth by youth model, which is to say like our members are mostly youth, and we serve youth in our community. So it's very like tailored to what each community needs by people who know what that community is facing. And our goals is like seeking to eradicate the stigma around mental or reduce the stigma around mental health, because obviously it's going to be a long journey to completely get rid of it, but we try to reduce it in any way that we can, making mental health services more accessible, and just to start the conversation around mental health. And so what we do to do that, we do a lot of outreach to local schools and community organizations. We raise awareness about like mental health and available resources there and like in other organizations. We offer a lot of workshops taught by our members, like crisis intervention training, about peer support, about empathetic listening, etc. And we also work with school administration to change or start the conversation around mental health, and then changing school policy to better accommodate students with mental health challenges. So it's kind of a lot of different things, but yeah, it all sort of comes together in Safe Space, which is amazing. And sort of like a note before I get into my actual presentation is just I made a very conscious decision not to include like pictures of me in my eating disorder, and like to not put in any sort of what people would call statistics, such as my lowest weight, my lowest BMI, or like how little I ate while restricting, because I believe like these are sort of measurements that people with eating disorders use to compare themselves to others. And historically they're used to validate or invalidate other people's experiences. And I think that people really need to move past this element of comparison. So I'm trying to just sort of do my part by not really mentioning that information. So also that's not really a question I'm willing to answer. And yeah, so my illness, I struggle with anorexia. And for those who don't know, anorexia is restrictive eating disorder in which sort of like sufferers deliberately eat very little and choose to exercise a little too much. And the food restriction happens for quite a variety of reasons. It can be out of like this extreme desire to control one's body, or just like an extreme desire for control in general. Another common one is like people want to feel emotionally numb. And for me personally, I didn't eat because I felt like I didn't deserve to live. And that was something just triggered by a lot of things in my life. And I also wanted the emotional numbing that my eating disorder provided me, because I have like a comorbid mood disorder and anxiety disorder. So like for me, my eating disorder served to kind of block some of that out. Though I kind of like had instances of restriction throughout my childhood and like attempts at weight loss when I was quite young, I started sort of restricting more. Like I would say my eating disorder formally began when I was 13, and I was hospitalized and diagnosed when I was 15. And for a while, I was actually in and out of both like the hospital and treatment for a lot of heart issues and health issues just relating to malnutrition, and just sort of like caught up in a relapse cycle. And like it was a very dark time in my life because I didn't really want to get better. I didn't want wellness. I didn't want recovery, because I just didn't think there was more to life other than just misery. And it was a very hopeless point in my life. And I just didn't really see the point of trying to get better. So it was not really a great time. But so what changed? Like what sort of got me from like this low point, this rock bottom for me, to like actually recovering and like speaking at events such as these? Well, I was what people call like a revolving door patient, which is to say like you are like you leave treatment, like you walk out the revolving door and then you like go right back into the revolving door and you're in again. And I realized like I had a moment where I kind of realized like, oh, I am so tired of this. Like this has been my life for too long and it's limiting everything I can do and everything I want to do in my life. So it was just a very miserable, limited way to live. And I was sort of like, I got to a point where I was kind of tired of like relapse, and I didn't really want to spend the rest of my life like that. And then I realized like I could not do everything I wanted to do with my eating disorder, because like I've always been a very ambitious person. I have a lot of dreams of like success. I want to be a doctor. I want to make a positive impact on the world. I want to leave some sort of legacy behind. And I realized I really could not do that with an eating disorder, and spending so much time in treatment and resisting treatment, it was just too much. So I kind of decided that I wanted a future, and I had to commit to that really hard. And for me, I found a lot of purpose in like volunteering, because it was just personal meaning. It was something to motivate myself, it was something to live for. So I found a lot of purpose in volunteering and like my own education, because I like learning, I like being a student, and just, yeah, my relationships. Like I didn't want to like make the people who love me like worried all the time. So I realized then that I should commit to recovery and to wellness. So after you commit to like recovery, I wish I could say like you're done, it's over, you're well. Unfortunately, like committing is not enough. You have to make conscious choices that like promote that decision and that actively carry your recovery forward. There are a lot of concrete action and changes you need to make to your life to get well. It's not just as simple as waking up one day and deciding you're going to do it. It's not enough to decide. You have to go do it that day and then the next day and every day. So it's really about that consistency, and it's really about doing what you need to do to get well. And like everyone's journey to recovery and wellness looks different. Not everyone will go to like formalized treatment, but for me, I needed a lot of like professional support. I was in residential, which was like a 24/7 sort of like in care for long-term care for eating disorders. And then I was also in a step down program, PHP and IOP. And beyond that, like I just needed support from like a lot of my friends and from some of my family members. And those were really what carried me through. So just like as a note, like not everyone goes to like formal treatment because a lot of people don't have access to it. But I was very fortunate to be able to get that professional support. And I don't think I would have been able to do it without this sort of the help I got. So a lot of my recovery has just been deciding time and time again that I do want to get better and that I do want to be well. Part of committing to wellness is sort of deciding that you deserve to live your best possible life. And recovery is just an absolutely non-linear process. Like you're going to have slip ups, you're going to have bad days, you're going to go back sometimes. But that doesn't mean you can't keep moving forward, because it takes a lot of like recovery takes a lot of time and patience, and you have to keep going even though you've made a mistake or you've fallen backwards somewhat. So they can like, and like lapses and slips, they're so frustrating, especially when you're working so hard for something. But like you have to remember that you're not a failure if you slip up. You just have to get right back on track and keep going. And just because I made one mistake or bad decision, it didn't mean I was back to the start. So you just really have to remember that like one mistake doesn't mean it's over. You have to keep going even though like you messed up. So I just want to emphasize like wellness is a conscious choice that you need to keep choosing. It's really a commitment that you need to prioritize. And it's a promise to yourself that you deserve better than a life with illness and unwellness. So where I am now, I'll be the first to acknowledge that I'm definitely still struggling, but at least now I'm struggling forward. I'm still working on doing and just being better to myself and for myself. Pandemic was really hard for me to cope with because I was struggling with isolation, some issues in my family, just a really stressful situation overall. And I did end up relapsing during that time. But like that wasn't an excuse to completely give up and go back to square one. I had to sort of keep moving forward with my recovery and seek out help again, sort of get to where I want to be. I had to go back to treatment, and I made the decision to do so because I want to prioritize my wellness. And my goal for that is like I just want to be able to have a full college experience that's not ruined by being ill. I really did like make that decision because I believe I have a future and that I believe that it's worth living, and I really needed to be well to enjoy it. And I'm actually hopeful about my future now, which is something I never could have imagined a couple years ago. And I truly do believe that like recovery and wellness are possible for everyone. And then the next slide, just like it's just me being happy in recovery. Like I just wanted to share because like I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and like I just want to show sort of what the other side looks like, because I have been on the other side. And like for me, I was speaking at a premiere for a mental health film that I directed over one summer, and then I did fundraisers with Safe Space to raise money for causes that I care about by selling my art, which I love art, so it was kind of perfect. And I went to the National Student Leadership Conference, and I just hang out with my friends, and those are all things that just like they would have not been possible. I truly believe like you can make like some people have made the point that you could probably do all this like while restricting, like what does food have to do with it? But for me personally, like maybe not, like maybe I could have done it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed those things as much as I did if I were ill, because illness is like they just leave you with no energy to enjoy life. So this idea that like I could maybe do everything with my eating disorder. That was something I really struggled with because I wanted to stay in it. But then I kind of was like, but I can do it, maybe, maybe not. But I wouldn't have like it. I think like the fact like whether or not you can do it is less important than would it be meaningful to you if you were struggling like while you're struggling so much and refusing to get better. Like would that have had any meaning? Um, and I don't think I would have had the energy. I don't think I would have had the drive or like the emotion or motivation to do it. So it just illnesses like they really do leave you with nothing that's good. It leaves you with no energy to enjoy life, which is why getting well is just so essential. And then continued because why not? So yeah, wellness tips, kind of just basically what I've learned, and like some ideas of like what you can do to get from point A to point B. Um, because like I would love to be able to give you a concrete step-to-step guide, but that's not really possible because everyone's wellness journey will look different. And you really have like you can't really draw comparisons. Every situation and circumstances are so unique. And like your wellness journey is going to look different from mine. Maybe it's going to look different from Aryan's. It's going to look different from the person sitting next to you, or like really just anyone, because everyone's situation and circumstances and like if you're ill, like it's so different. And really the question is like, what do you need to do to be well? And that's what you need to ask yourself. And another thing that I sort of learned is like energy has to go somewhere. A lot of people have like a self-destructive energy, and you need to start putting that away from the things that are harming you, such as like for me, it was my eating disorder, but it can be like overeating for some people, it can be self-harm, it can be substance use. You need to take energy away from those things and put it towards things that'll help you. And I believe that self-destructive energy can be redirected. And for me, I directed that into my art, I redirected it into my volunteer work and community service, and I put all that energy into my education so that I could have a future. Yeah. And like that energy will always be there. It's just how you choose to use it. And then other thing is like you have to remember why you're doing this, because wellness journeys aren't easy. They take a lot of time and energy, and it's a huge commitment. So you have to remember why you made the choice in the first place and hold on to what inspired you to do this for yourself. And then of course, like it's hard to be emotionally well if you aren't taking care of your body, if you aren't eating enough, if you aren't like getting outside sometimes, if you're not resting, if you're not doing those things, you can't really like respect and take care of yourself and your body. And that's really essential because it's hard to be emotionally well in a physically ill body. And then it's also all right to admit that you might need a little more help, because no one is alone in this. You are just not alone in this. Being well, recovery is difficult. Being well is difficult, especially in a global pandemic. Like doing all these things and getting better, it's really hard. And no one said you have to like suffer through this alone. So, there's no shame in reaching out to help to get well. And if you would have like just one takeaway from my story and from my journey, is that like help is out there, and it's just a matter of like sort of seeking it and taking action for yourself, because like life is worth it and there's more to this than just illness, and everyone needs wellness. So thank you to CWC for letting me speak here. I really enjoyed this opportunity. And of course, thank you for Safe Space for like sort of inspiring me to do things like this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kai, for your presentation. Honestly, there were so many tokens of advice here that I just want to incorporate in my life as well. So now that we've finished both of our speakers' presentations, we'll go on to our Q&A section. But let me start off with our first question for today. So both of you talked a lot about, motivation as sort of your key drive of pushing you along your journey. So could you just elaborate more on how you found those sources of journey in the first place? And obviously, if this was not consistent throughout, how did you push yourself to go back along those sources of motivation? And what tips you have for our members as well?
So for me, I think that motivation for me was found through obviously my being able to attend my basketball games. But first of all, I like to elaborate on motivation can help you start, but I think that it would be discipline that would keep you going throughout the whole thing. Because motivation, in my opinion, it's not gonna be there for the whole time. Motivation can be there for you to start, but I think that if you form discipline, which can be done through willpower, strong self-control, and strong self-control and motivation kind of equal for me discipline. So if you have strong discipline to carry out throughout the whole journey, I think that that's what will keep it going through, and that's what helped me keep going through. I mean, I did not like my process the whole time. I actually sometimes I despised it, but it was my discipline that carried me out through the whole thing. Like I did not have motivation to get up and fit fitness into my school, into my even off school, even off basketball. Like that did not appear every day. So I think it's discipline for me that helped me carry out through my whole journey. So yeah.
For me, I definitely struggled with motivation. And like not everyone's gonna have one moment where they realize like, oh, I kind of need this wellness and recovery in my life. But I definitely did. I'm very fortunate to just sort of like have that moment where I decided to commit. Um, but for me, like motivation has just come from like my everyday life and my experiences being ill. Because like if you can't find anything that will give you reason to struggle forward, then you have reasons to like, then you can think about like what your life is like while you're ill and if that's really what you want for the rest of your life. And for me, that was the beginning of motivation because I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life living the way that I was because that's not really living. That's just like kind of clawing around, surviving. Like that's not it. That's not what I wanted. And then as you like sort of start recovery, I think, and like your recovery and your journey to wellness, I think there's a lot of like just things that will come up for you as motivation. You're like, oh, I'm really enjoying being able to go out with my friends and not have to worry about like food there or whatever. Like I'm really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying being more present and I'm really enjoying like being able to focus. And then that starts to become motivation. And then you start realizing like, oh, I actually, what do I want to do with in my life in the future? And then I thought like college, wanting to become a doctor, wanting to be pre-med, like all those things. And those were motivation as well, because I didn't like, I kind of realized like, I can't do what I want to do, like while struggling so much. So I had to get better. And like, yeah, my motivation definitely like the level goes up and down all the time. But the problem, like, and like that's just kind of inevitable. Like you're not always going to be 100%. I want this, and the trick is really to like find a way to get by when you're at like 25% or like even like 10% or like 0%. And for me, like it helps to have reminders of what I want. Like I have a list of reasons to recover. I have like kind of like I would show you, but I have kind of like, but I'm like in a hotel right now. I have kind of like a vision board almost of like pictures of my friends, quotes that inspire me, of like, you know, like the word college is written on it in huge letters. And those are like things that motivate me. And I look at that and I think about the intention behind making it. And I just think, yeah, like I still do want this. And I just grit my teeth and do what I have to do to get better and wait for like the motivation to come back in full force because it will eventually come back if you don't backslide. Like you're not going to stay unmotivated forever, but it's just the trick is getting through the moments of unmotivation.
Well, thank you both for your answers to that first one. We actually have a question from one of our audience members. So if there's someone you know who's displaying symptoms of things like maybe an eating disorder or has unhealthy habits, what's the best way to approach this topic with them and talk to them about it without being weird? So I think another way to kind of rephrase this is how can you show support to someone who you think might be going through something similar to what yourself, Aryan, and yourself, Kai, went through? Like, what's one of the best ways that your friends or people around you can show support to you?
How they can show support to you, or how the question is asking if you know there's someone displaying these type of symptoms, what is the best way to approach the topic with them and talk to them about it without being weird. That's hard. I actually have a friend. So I have a friend, a very close friend. We were very competitive at a very young age. So he had very unhealthy habits as well, such as I did, similar to mine. But because we were so competitive at a young age, because I went through my own journey, he wanted to follow the same thing because he wanted to compete with me. So it's not it. It's hard to bring it up without being weird. So because you can't just go and tell someone that they need to improve themselves, because that if that's not what they want to do, and if that's not what they truly want to do, you can't really tell them to do that, because they have to want it for themselves. You can't. The thing in terms of even what I've learned so far in my life, you have to want what you want. You need to want your success. No one else is going to want it for you. So it's a matter of them doing it themselves. I think it's actually, I think it's a good thing that they should want it themselves rather than you tell them to do it. So if I were you, I it'd be hard to hard to do that. But I guess I'd approach it in a way of describing the benefits, I guess. But again, the aspect of you're gonna want to for yourself. So yeah.
I would say like if you're trying to approach someone who's struggling, like timing is essential. First of all, like you don't want to ask them when they're already stressed out and uncomfortable. Like you want to find a good time to talk to them and start with that. And once you have kind of an entryway or a moment, just like start off by saying like what you've noticed. Don't add in your own judgment. Don't say like, I don't know, it's really bad that you're doing this. Just say, I noticed that you're doing this. And then maybe say like how it's kind of like your reaction, like say, I'm a little concerned about this and here's why. And maybe like they might not realize what's going on, or they might have like they might know exactly what's happening. And it's just really important to have that open and transparent conversation where you just start off with like what you see and you start off with the facts. Because you can't, I think like early, like when you're talking to someone, you can't put in too much of your own opinion and perception when you're just starting off the conversation. You need to start off with what can't really be denied. And once you've pointed that out, like sort of say like, I'm really concerned about this. Like, who can we talk to like for help? Like, do you like trying to direct them towards the appropriate resources? Because obviously you're not going to be able to solve your friend's problems. You're not going to be able to like, if they have an eating disorder, you're not going to be able to like fix their eating disorder. Like that's not really a thing. But you can direct them towards like a therapist. You can direct them towards a school counselor. You can direct them towards all these resources that are available. And kind of the key is like finding who they're comfortable with. And of course, like you want to ask how you can help them, because each person's journey is so individualized and so different. Like if they need someone to like help remind them why they're doing this, if they need help with motivation, like you can remind them like of all the things that they're trying to get better for, or like all the things that are out there that are worth getting better for. And just, yeah, like I think it really comes down to just having that open and honest conversation about your concerns and what you're seeing, directing them towards resources, and then just supporting them afterwards in any way that you can. And like making sure that you actually ask for like what they need in terms of support.
Great. Thank you so much for both of your answers. So that question was geared towards how you would support others, but in terms of your own support network, I know that there's some barriers for individuals, such as, gaining access to professional resources, gaining access to family members that would be comfortable talking about these situations. So can you talk a little bit about how you kind of fostered your support system and what tips you have for others as well?
Oh yeah. So in my journey, I had my mom. My mom helped me a lot in deciding what foods were like important for you. I didn't really seek any professional support or any like professional advice. More so, I kind of knew, like it was kind of obvious to me what was wrong and what was right. But I think that you should surround yourself with people that can help you. I mean, it could be your friends, it could be your parents, it could be whoever can help you identify what is good and what is bad, I guess. So that's for me. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think like support is going to look different for everyone, but I think it's hard to like do it without any sort of support. And I think everyone can access at least one friend or family member, or find someone who's willing to sort of be their buddy in this. For me, what I did was like I thought about like who do I want to help me during this time, and who has kind of like the emotional bandwidth to do so. And I reached out to those people and like said, hey, this is what's happening. I feel like I kind of need some help. Are you able to like, and then like say specifically what you're sort of needing? Like for me, it was just I needed someone to talk to sometimes. A lot of times I just needed someone to distract me when I was like struggling. And just sort of like actually people think like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to sort of like trouble people with my issues. But the thing is like my friends were already worried, and they were really relieved when I admitted that I was struggling, and when I admitted that I needed help, because they're like, oh my gosh, you're not trying to do this alone, finally. Like, and that actually strengthened our relationships. Like they didn't think I was a burden. I'm really grateful for that. Like they were just glad that I had thought to reach out to them. And they were some of them were like, oh, I'm honored. I'm like, yeah, like I would do the same for you. And I have done the same for a lot of my friends. And it's really just like remembering that vulnerability actually strengthens a lot of your relationships. It makes them more real. It makes them more authentic connections. And I think the hardest part is like taking the first step, like sending out the first text to ask for help. And if you really feel like there's like no friend or family member that you can go to, there's always like free online things. Like there's like a lot of hotlines you can use. There's a lot of like forums. There's a lot of like chat rooms. There's all sorts of resources out there if you're looking for them. And we on Safe State's website, we actually have we have a huge list of resources. We have a running list going for all sorts of different like struggles or situations. And like, I think for me, like what's more helpful has always been like face-to-face interaction with my friends and like some of my family members. But for other people, like if you really don't have access to that, then there's always the free online resources and 24/7 hotlines and all those things.
All right. In the meantime, so there's a lot of stigma that can be perceived with topics relating to the things that you both spoke about. What about what are some steps that you took to deal with the stigma surrounding any of your wellness journeys?
To deal with those type of things, I think that it's for me, it wasn't really. I kind of just ignored. I ignored the stigma, and I just stuck with what I wanted to do. I really didn't care about. I just took. I think I just didn't really care about the negativity. I just proceeded to go because I think I didn't care about anything else but succeeding. So when you have that much desire, I don't think nothing else matters except for obviously everything else that's essential in life, but not the negativity. That's very unimportant to me at that time. It was very insignificant. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like what Aryan said about like kind of ignoring the negative thoughts and beliefs around what you're struggling with. For me, I'm someone who definitely cares about what other people think. That's something I've always struggled with. And it was really hard for me to like tune out what people were saying or like the judgment or the stigma around seeking help. And that's why for the longest time, I didn't talk to my friends. I didn't talk to my teachers about the help I was needing. Like I just kept it all to myself. But I think for me, like it helped me to deal with stigma by connecting with people who were kind of facing the same thing that I was, like people who also are struggling with recovery and like with wellness, like connecting with those people and like, being able to have a space where you're not going to be judged, being able to have a space where you feel comfortable. Like for me, that's been safe space because a lot of us have had our own mental health challenges. And I was able to connect with a lot of people who are going through similar things. And we were like, yeah, there's stigma, but we don't need to, but it just helped to have like a group of people who are together and trying to ignore that stigma. Like I couldn't have done it alone. And also there's things you can do to kind of feel better about it. Like you can find ways to reduce the stigma. And like some of the ways that you can just do this is sharing your story and like knowing that you're going to be judged for your story, but doing it anyway, because like that's what makes it so important, because there's so many people who will think like we live in a society where people might still think less of you for struggling. But that's not to say that but there's also people who will think more of you for talking about your struggles. And it's important to remember that. And then the end of the day, like, who do you want to be around? Do you want to be around the people who are further stigmatizing mental health and wellness? Or do you want to be around the people who are starting to break that stigma? And I think that we can all be people who like start to take down the stigma around mental health issues. And like, that's really what I want to be doing. So for me, it was just kind of like Aryan said, like you have to start tuning out what people are saying, because no one's opinion matters but your own and the people you care about. Maybe like in some cases, like in the end of the day, it comes down to what you want and like what you're trying to do.
Okay, thank you so much for those answers. So one of our attendees is asking, do you think social media helps in any way or make it difficult? And how do you recommend being on social media during a recovery period in either of your journeys?
Yeah. That really depends on social media, who you follow. I recently I unfollowed a lot of on social media. I unfollowed like a lot of people who don't help me achieve my success that I want to achieve in the future. So it's a matter of it depends on who you're following and what the feed is on your social media. That's dependable. But what I recommend is follow people or get content that like, motivate you or make you feel better. I think that it's important if you're trying to go on social media, because there's no way of escaping negativity on social media. There's no way. But I think that the best way you can block out of it is follow people follow platforms that can make you feel better or motivate you. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think social media is definitely like, it's I don't know what the saying would be, but there's like a very positive, beneficial side, and there's also the side that you want to definitely be staying off of because that just make your issues worse. For me personally, I stayed on social media during my recovery. I'm still on social media because my issues didn't really stem from social media or comparison. But like if the reason why someone's struggling with like their eating habits or struggling with their wellness is because if like social media is playing a role in your illness, then you do need to be off it while you're trying to get better and you need to find a way to use it more healthfully, if at all. But like in my experience, social media has been more helpful because I've been able to connect with other people who are going through recovery. I've been able to follow people who inspire me to get better. And like when I'm feeling unmotivated, I can remember like I'm not in this alone. There are all these people I can connect with over social media about what I'm going through. And also just remembering like social media in no way is a replacement for like the people who you should be connecting with in your life out like in person. I guess you can't really do that right now, but like before and soon now because people are getting vaccinated. Um, like social media is not a substitute for like interactions with your friends and with like your family if that's a good relationship. Um, and like what am I trying to say? Like I think social media, like whether or not you use it in recovery, depends on how you plan on using it. Because if you're using it as a way to like compare yourself to others, as a way to judge yourself, as a way to put yourself down, then you shouldn't be on social media. But if you're using it as a way to like help you and like a way to inspire you and a way to feel less alone, then I see no harm. But it really is a case by case basis. And I would encourage everyone who's kind of questioning it to like further explore why you're questioning it. And like I think deep down we all know whether or not we should be on social media right now. Honestly, from like I think for me, like I knew when I should get off and I knew when I should maybe go on. But I think the hard part is just doing what you know is right.
Okay, once again, thank you both so much for answering these questions, and also thank you so much for presenting in our session today.